Please join in, join in. We are building movements for gender equality under AWESOME. And so everyone needs to join in. Join the movement. Join the movement. Yeah. Beautiful energy from Ethiopia. Oh, Kenya with all the new strokes. Hey. Yes. Okay, once the last person turns over here, we can then have our seats and make sure you maintain the momentum. Christabella. Mwanamke so tu vipodozi na vipicha vya kichokozi. Squeeze mwanaume anapenda mwanamke ajitume na chape kazi. Thank you. Thank you DJ. Thank you. Woo! A round of applause. That's beautiful. And that is the energy that we want if we want to be able to continue the work that we are doing. Because what's a revolution if I can't dance? Yes. Okay. Okay, good afternoon once again. My name is Georgia Tumwesje. I am the Women and Leadership Program Manager at the Forum for Women in Democracy, FOWODE. My presentation is going to cover just a short bit about FOWODE, the context in which we are working, the pitfalls for women in leadership, the opportunities, and then some recommendations. We have made some recommendations and also are going to be sharing just a little bit in brief what FOWODE is doing with AWESOME. So very many times we talk about all these challenges, but we forget to look at the opportunities. And so my presentation is also going to pinpoint the opportunities. So FOWODE is a national women's rights organization that was born out of the constitution-making process in 1995. The 1995 constitution is actually acclaimed to be one of the most gender-responsive in Africa. The implementation bit is usually the challenge, but the constitution itself, well, since then has undergone so many, it's been assaulted over the years. People say it has been raped over and over and over. Yeah. So our vision is a just and fair society where women and men equally participate in and benefit from decision-making processes. And that's just a little bit about FOWODE. The operating context in Uganda. We elected a second female as the Speaker of Parliament. That really goes to reshape the narrative about women's leadership. We feel like ring-fencing this position for women in Uganda. There is still persistent violence against women and girls. Of course, there's been retrogression in domestic violence and GBV management. Over 70% of all the cases reported were violations against women and girls. Just in the last year reporting. We have what we call the parish development model, or the PDM. The government believes that this is an antidote to ending economic injustice in Uganda. And of that, only 30% is allocated to women. But when you talk to the different women in different parishes, they do not know about this model. They have not seen the money. They can't touch it. They don't know anything about it. There's also usually money for mindset change in Uganda, and that never goes anywhere. Okay, the context. We are in 2023, but are still recovering from the 2021 general elections. So we are operating in the post-2021 election period. There's growing insecurity, extrajudicial killings, there are abductions. I don't know whether you people watch our news or read about the stories from Uganda. There are drones, the Toyota Hiace. So those cars come and pick up people, and your people do not know where you are. There is nothing about you. After months, they will produce you in court with very many scars. And usually they say the people got accidents or something, but it's torture. So that's the sort of operating context we are in. We have women in leadership dynamics. Now, we have advocated for numbers. We have seen the numbers growing, but we still have a lot of patronage, and we have upwards delegation. So we know in Uganda, the Prime Minister is a woman. Yay! Big win. The Vice President is a woman. Yay! Big win. So we have the First Lady. The First Lady is also the Minister of Education. In the Constitution of Uganda, the Constitution does not provide for the office of the First Lady. But the First Lady has powers, and so she delegates upwards. Because, you know, when you look at cabinet positions, really, the Prime Minister and the Vice President are way, 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 way higher than the Minister of Education, who is also the First Lady. But, ladies and gentlemen, guess what? The First Lady or the Minister of Education delegates some roles to the Vice President. We have seen the Vice President going to represent her at events. We have seen the Prime Minister of Uganda going to represent the Minister of Education at international level conferences. So those are the dynamics at play. Of course, the dwindling civic space, everyday civic space continues to shrink. As Maureen asks us to, verify your data. Where is this data coming from? And IRIA is telling us every other day, update IATI. So there are new bills that are being tabled, and now we had to undergo mandatory registration with the Personal Data Protection Office. So we all know that civil society works with data, because without data, it is very difficult to advocate. So we do data-driven advocacy, but that is also being controlled. We have seen burglaries and attacks on offices, especially offices that are doing work around governance. Yeah, they are looked at as opposition. Then DGF ended its support to Uganda. I don't know whether they are still supporting Kenyan entities. Is DGF here? DGF is the Democratic Governance Fund. It was a big fund coming from EU, the European Union countries. And so they ended their support, and they've been the biggest funders of governance work in Uganda. Then, of course, we have politics at play. Sometimes we see our sisters and brothers from Kenya making memes about us. You guys call Uganda a kingdom. And sometimes it's hard to defend ourselves, especially given that we have the Muhoozi project, where the first son is being fronted as the successor. We have a lot of fights in the opposition parties. Do you see how the context really will continue to sideline women? Because the ground is really not leveled. So that is what we are working with in Uganda today. So the gender composition in politics, I thought it would be good to take you a little back, not so far back. The composition of the 10th Parliament, as at April 2018, was that way. We had 34%, 34.7%. The orange is the women and the blue, the men. So that was the composition. Then cabinet and state ministers in 2020, we had 30% versus 70%. Gender composition again. So this is the composition of district chairpersons. I think in Kenya you call them governors. I don't know whether that's the equivalent. So the district chairpersons, we have 146 districts in Uganda and only three districts in the whole country have women chairpersons as at April 2021. Parliament over the years, in 1996 we had 19%. In 2006, 33. 2011, 30. 2016, 35. 2021, this was 33, but it's now 34 because of the ones that are appointed. So from the army, we have some women who increased the number to that. So you can see that it keeps stagnant between 33, so around 33, between 33 and 35. It's been stagnant over the years. And then at the national, we have 189 women MPs. These include 14 ex-officio members. Then so they are only 34% of the entire 11th Parliament. We have 14 women cabinet ministers. That constitutes 45% of the 31 cabinet ministers, and 24 women ministers constituting 48% out of the 50. See, we really have a big number of ministers. And then local government positions in total, we have women representing at 46%. It almost looks like it's not too far away from 50, but now, as Maureen said, the devil lies in the details, and statistics sort of hide the true picture. So we have quite a number of challenges, or the pitfalls. There's increased commercialization of politics, and we have said, Sarah told you earlier that nomination fees just for member of parliament increased from 200 Uganda shillings to 200 Uganda shillings is less than $100 to 3 million Uganda shillings. That alone is to say, hey, you do not have the money, so you cannot represent people. Keep on the side. Continue to watch. And we all know that, if you're not at the table, most likely, you are on the menu. So, violence against women in elections, that has never gone away. We have people who even stage, they organize rape for women. It is, it is the biggest tool used to disempower women. Rape, there's no coming back from rape. They will talk to you, they will take you to hospital, probably, arrest this person, but that is it really. So it's the biggest disempowerment tool. We documented a study on open seats. We documented a study on experiences of women in parliament, and people think open seats are men's seats, so the mainstream seats that are not the other quota seats. And then there's sexism in information systems and electoral management. So even the way they report about women candidates, and that goes to the insensitive and sexist coverage for women. So in Uganda, I don't know whether this is the same as in Kenya and Ethiopia. If Sarah is contesting, and this is just an example, they will say, this is an example and it is the truth. You can Google some of the news. They'll say, oh, sexy Sarah tantalizes voters in Kampala district, and that is the headline. Where if it's when they're talking about Richard, they'll talk about his qualifications, they'll talk about his experience with advocacy, they'll talk about all the degrees he has attained and why he is suitable. So you see, the media plays such a big role in whether they take women candidates seriously or not. So of course we have the weak democratic and support structures within political parties. Uganda is operating under a multi-party system. And so usually if the political parties do not front you as a candidate or as a flag bearer, it is rare that you are going to get elected into any office. So political parties play such a huge role. And then of course the illiteracy, the patriarchy, as we had talked about. But there are opportunities despite the grim picture that I have painted. We have a very favorable legal and policy framework. It still just goes about implementation. The existence of some role models who delivered, even when the system was really bad. We have the Winnie Byanyumas that people keep referring to, the Miriam Matembes, and these continue to be role models. The existence of civil society organizations like FOWODE, the changing cultural context, we continue to have conversations so that we can reshape the narrative. And also, of course, there are different institutions in place. We have many recommendations. I have recommendations for the government of Uganda, but they are not here in this room today. So I don't know whether I should go on and just read them out. But there they are. Electoral reform. We are talking about reforming the law on elections and the constitution, and that is work that FOWODE is heavily engaged in throughout the country. We want to see electoral and constitutional reforms that are more responsive to the realities of the needs of women and girls, as well as persons with disabilities. We believe that sex-disaggregated data will also go a long way to inform gender-responsive policy formulation. Reviewing Political Parties and Organizations Act. Right now, political parties are mostly there to sort of legitimize the junta. We use some words very carefully in Uganda, because you risk being arrested. We also have recommendations for political parties. So that's one of the participants. This is a woman councillor, so she represents people at the local level, that picture there. And she was in the council deliberating with her baby. And so if we have more women, I know this is very challenging, but if we continuously show that our biological and gender roles do not weaken who we are, it's going to also go a long way in reshaping the narrative around women in leadership. And so political parties need to ensure that they front women as candidates and also encourage them to contest on the mainstream seats. So civil society, I have quite a number of recommendations. I'm not going to go through all of them now. I am happy to share my presentation because I see the energy in the room is beginning to go down. So I need to finalize this as quickly as I can. One of the last slides is this. Just wanted to share what FOWODE is doing through AWESOME to ensure that we have more women and women with disabilities participating. Our partner, NUWODU, would have been the best placed because of their unique work around women with disabilities, and so we were banking on them to give you the Ugandan perspective about working with women with disabilities and promoting leadership in that area. So it's unfortunate we're unable to have them. So FOWODE continues to convene solidarity forums to bring women together, to provide space, because spaces are the most important thing right now that we can offer women, where they can convene and talk through some of the challenges, but also these offer spaces to strategize. Civic education with communities continues to happen, and that is on SGBV as well as women in leadership. So we are working towards ending, eliminating, preventing, and responding to SGBV in communities, but also rallying communities to support women in leadership. Capacity building, we undertake transformative leadership camps with young women because we believe that they're going to be the next generation of leaders. So we also do pre-election trainings for women candidates, as well as post-election workshops, so that women can effectively legislate in their spheres. We do mentorship and coaching, not as FOWODE, but we connect and link. And so for many opportunities, we have brought on board women who have walked through, who have journeyed some of the political challenges before, so that they can mentor the new generation. You know, if you go to a local district and you bring a Miriam Matembe, a Winnie Byanyima, you know, all these women leaders, to talk to them, it empowers them, because we keep referring to Winnie Byanyima because for her, she never came through as a woman MP. Even in the days, in the 90s, before we started conversations on you know, ensuring that we have women in these leadership spaces, she was already contesting on a direct seat. And so to just check with her and see what drove her there, you know, where was she getting the zeal from and the challenges as well? Because she never lost any election. She beat men day in, day out. And so we continue to aspire to be like her. We also bring in international role models. We do not know the perspective of Martha Karua in Kenya. We don't know what you think about her. But when she is speaking in Uganda, every woman wants to stand and contest for whatever it is. Even village council, whether it is church leadership, you know. Also, so the thing we also keep struggling with is after the mentorship sessions, everyone leaves fired up and they feel like we are going to conquer the world, we are going to achieve gender parity. And then 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 1 month, the energy goes again. So we also need to work around maintaining the momentum, maintaining the fire as we get into the next cycle of elections. Stakeholder engagements. We are working with electoral management bodies. We are meeting technocrats, politicians, opinion leaders, women's rights organizations. We convened the Uganda Gender Consortium on SDGs at FOWODE. This is to ensure that we are advancing gender equality in the implementation of SDGs. And so this is all the work we are doing. We believe that we cannot attain gender parity without working with men. Because when we talk about patriarchy, you have seen women who are gatekeepers of patriarchy. And it is not because they want, it is just the society as is. And so we work with men who also reach out to their fellow men, because it's more likely that a man will listen to his fellow man than a little Georgia who is coming to talk about gender equality, and people think we want to be men, but that's not it. We just want equal opportunities. Yeah? We are undertaking massive media campaigns in the mainstream and social media to ensure that we have more women in leadership, but also ensure that we are preventing, mitigating, and responding to SGBV. We undertake research to continue to inform our advocacy. Okay, and this is the final slide. This is a bit of awesome in the news. That is us. So this is some of the work we do in the communities. the convenings. That picture over there is with Rebecca Kadaga, Martha Karua, Winnie Byanyima, Winnie Chiza during the groundbreaking ceremony of the Imara Women's Center. Also to mention, FOWODE is undertaking a big dream of putting up a big center to ensure that we have space for feminist organizing. So we continue to convene. That was the Sisterhood Forum in the middle, that picture there. Then in that Masindi police accused of charging GBV cases. So we're wondering why women and girls do not go to police to report. And turns out you need to pay hefty fees, there's corruption. There are people who go to report rape and then they get raped again at the police stations. That happens. And so bringing these things in the media and talking to the communities during civic education engagements helps them then to voice. So for all these meetings, we call the media as well, so that the police knows that we know what they are doing. And so we engage them as well. We have people standing up and constructing spaces for women. We have women in the communities, because we work with women groups at the grassroots, and so they keep tasking also the government to reallocate funds for their needs. So government to reconstruct Masindi Hospital, that was also the work of the communities that we work with through AWESOME. So thank you very much for listening. You have been such an amazing audience. Thank you. Back to you, Maureen.
Okay, I'm sure you'll all agree that Georgia gave a very powerful presentation. She's a very powerful speaker. We hope to see you running for office in Uganda. So before I give my comments, any comments, questions, inputs on Georgia's presentation, thoughts?
Just a comment, and to congratulate Georgia. It was a very nice presentation. And just to affirm you that, yes, Martha, we call her here the Iron Lady. Yes, so she's a powerhouse. Yeah, thank you.
All right, Kenya, do we see our future as we try to tangle with our constitution? We seeing our future? There were so many parallels that I felt were drawn between the Uganda and the continual changes on the constitution and what we're trying to do here in Kenya, and how we're slowly sliding to join our cousins. Let's think about that, but maybe not in this forum. But I think Georgia gave a really good presentation, and hearing from all of you just brings home how important contextual knowledge is, how important partners' work is, and that partners are truly the experts of their situations and their contexts, and yeah. And they're the ones who really should be guiding us as to what we should fund and how we should fund, not the other way around. So I think I just want to say that. And then I will move us swiftly on to, Galalta, you have a question. Please go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Not particularly for her, okay, for all of us. Mm-hmm. Well, from the morning up to this time, we've been talking about the gaps, the challenges, opportunities, and the like. Actually, she said she had a recommendation for the Ugandan government. If she shares us this, her thoughts, maybe it will be a takeaway for all of us. But what I'm saying is, she was so energetic in her presentation. How optimistic are we in foreseeing changes to come? It could be in the AWESOME period, or beyond that. That's just what I just wanted to say for all of us.
I can do an optimism check, Galalcha, before we move on to the next stage. How many, we'll just put our hands up, how many are optimistic that we can have a lot to achieve and can achieve it with regards to women's rights and women's political leadership? So everybody's optimistic. Everybody's optimistic, and I think it's a testament. We continue doing the work despite the challenges. So that must mean we're optimistic. That must mean we see a path to change. I think talking about, they've been good parts, but talking about the challenges just shows us that we still have a way to go, but I think everybody is willing to do it. And also, when we spot the obstacles, we can identify ways to deal with the obstacles. So now I'm going to move on to Gelalcha and UDNA to talk about more challenges, unless they would like to rest on the challenges. But I'll let you do the challenges for Ethiopia. Yes, please.
Well, there are a few challenges that we encountered as a country, and maybe also we can share across the region. As we've been saying, globally, Ethiopia ranks 26 out of 156 countries in the world in women's political participation. So it can be a very small contribution, but still we are there as a representation. From 156 countries, we stand at 26. So gender gaps is the political participation considers proportion of women to men, parliament, ministerial positions, and head of state. Despite the enabling constitutional legislation framework, there are no compulsory temporary special measures in Ethiopia that promotes women's political participation. As I have said in the morning, it depends on the will of the leading party. We don't have constitutionally binding law that mandates every political party to take women on board. That is one, I think that is one of the challenges that we should work as a country, as a region. Maybe some of you have legislation that permits the quota women leadership in the parliament at different levels, but we don't have that. So that is one of the challenges for Ethiopia. That is also encompassed in so many things. Like, for example, protective laws. When we were doing in the AWESOME project, we had encountered gang rape, and it was reported to the police and the attorney. They just kept quiet, and we challenged them. They said, the people are very dangerous, and they fear for their life. Imagine, they are law enforcement bodies, the duty bearers, but they are afraid to take the case to the court. So this works everywhere. If you don't have any protective law, you don't take a stand, or you don't take a step forward to just expose yourself. So this is a challenge. So leadership is a process whereby an individual influences a group of individuals to arrive at a common goal. It is defined by issues such as, for example, personal factors like personality characteristics, attitude, behavioral skills, So our women, how far are they really built within this framework? How are they confident? How are they going to come forward and just challenge the system, particularly when it is a male-dominated system? The socio-cultural barriers, which my colleagues have been saying in the morning, like the economic issues, the socio-economic and institutional government-related factors. So these are challenges. So the hostile social and political environment is one of the challenges. Patriarchal political culture that encourages men to become politicians and pushes away women. It is not appealing for women to come forward because the system itself is, a kind of a circle. Sorry. So, political violence that scares women from engaging in civic and politics itself is perceived as an understood and something scary. Whenever we have elections, whenever we had elections in the past, the opposition parties would against the ruling party, and which causes a lot of deaths, imprisonment, and the like. So a girl in a school seeing this, growing up, how dare she come and become a politician? Because the politics itself is a scary business. People say in my country, away from the electric and politics. That means if you touch it, you'll get your prize. So this scary business itself limits the participation of women. Politically motivated violence against women is also major deterrent to women's equal participation in public and political life. Lack of an implementable and comprehensive law specific to prevention and response on violence against women in politics. Extent and institution structures, constraints, and well as cultural and attitudinal barriers that suggest women should not have a role in public life is also another challenge to women participation in leadership. Structural barriers through discriminatory laws and initiatives. Generally, women experience unequal treatment in political, social, and economic problems, limits women's participation to run the leadership position. Capacity building gaps, as we have said. So, coming to my last presentation, Daniel Bakkale, a man called Daniel Bakkale, is a commissioner for the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission. When he was speaking, he said, the keynote, said, women politicians in Ethiopia face unequal forms of online and offline attacks and deliberate actions to discourage their participation in politics. The government also accepted this statement. So these are some of the challenges that we face. Maybe something I miss, EWDNA will add. So thank you very much.
As we wait for EWDNA, bado mapambano, so we will just be here. We will continue the fight for women's rights. I want to reassure the he for she's that the women are determined, and we also ask that you keep up your strength. It's okay. Sometimes there are things that are hard, but we just carry on. So now we're going to hear from UDNA with regards to challenges, and then right after, Asha is going to come and at least tell us what legal frameworks there are to deal with some of these issues. As we've heard from Ethiopia, there might not be legal frameworks for every single condition, but there are. There are legal frameworks that we can depend on. There are countries that we can learn from. There are best practices. They might not be from Kenya, Uganda, or Ethiopia, but around the continent, there are best practices which we can seek to emulate or advocate for as we do our advocacy and think around how we encourage women's participation in leadership. We're also welcoming the awesome baby in the house. Welcome.
I think it is better to start. Okay, thank you very much for this opportunity to present the challenges of women, especially women with disability. Challenges to women and women with disability participation in leadership, especially in political and peace processes, are interrelated, or they are multi-layered. There are multi-layered challenges, especially when it's come to women with disability. So some are the challenges are, the first one is societal norms and stereotype. As we know, there's a deep-rooted gender norms and stereotype that limit the woman access to leadership role and in decision-making process, especially in our country, which is related to traditional belief that women should stay in the home, and there is gender roles that should follow the patriarchal system in the society. This is the first challenges, especially when it comes to women with disability. The challenges is double, because she is a woman, and when she is a disability, when she has some kind of impairment, the challenges is triple. The other one is when it comes to women with disability, there is almost limited access to education and any other kind of skill development, because there is unequal access to quality education and skill development, and there is also low opportunities for to engage in the participation for any kind of it can be political or it can be in peace processes. So this limited access to any kind of education or any kind of developmental process hinder her participation to become a woman with in the parliamentary. This is major challenges. The other one is lack of support networks and mentorship, especially when it's come to women with disability. There is almost lack of support and mentorship opportunities that can help her to navigate her or that can shine her confidences, and that also limit her ability to participate in the leadership position. The other one is the discriminatory law and policies, especially when it comes to ownership or land ownership processes. It hinders the ownership of the land, especially for women with disability. So this discriminatory law and policies hinder her participation in any kind of political participation or in economic empowerment. The other one is limited representation. As Dubabe said earlier, there is almost low representation of women with disabilities in the parliaments. So this underrepresentation leads to the limitation of women with disability participation in the political. The other one is intersectional disability. As I said before, if she is a woman and if she has some kind of impairment, it's almost impossible to her to think, to engage in any kind of political processes. So this intersectional discriminatory is also another challenge to her to participate in any political processes. I think it's all about our challenges. Maybe we have mentioned some key addresses to tackle these challenges. The first one is there should be gender responsive legal reforms that help her, that protect her right, or that tackle the discriminatory practices, which is highly shine in our country. The other one is there should be capacity building trainings. So this capacity building trainings helps her to shine and to get access to participate in any kind of political processes. The other one is creating a supportive environment. One of the challenges especially for women with disability is to getting accessible environment to participate in the political process. So when we create this supportive environment, or by creating accessible environment, she can easily participate in this process. The other one is we should integrate gender mainstreaming policies, programs that help her to participate in decision-making processes. The other one is there should be initiative and supports, especially from women or other organizations or other donors, by providing training, support, or by advocating for their right, is one of the major important issues should be addressed. The other one is there should be inclusive policies. These inclusive policies ensure accessible infrastructures, it provide reasonable accommodation, and it mainstream the disability inclusion in all sectors. So this is all about the challenges and the addresses that should be tackle these challenges. And thank you. If you have any question, you can. I have just
Sorry, mine is not even a question. It's more of a comment or a concern that I would like to hear from Team Ethiopia. I've not heard them mention anything about the election management system, about the electoral bodies, also just maybe about political parties. How does all that play against women's participation? Yeah, just a clarification on that.
We have officially established electoral board, which is neutral. We can say neutral. So all political parties are registered when they fulfill the criteria that the electoral board presents, or the criteria. And then there will be a time for registration of their supporters, the members, and then they will given time for to present their agendas to the community. The government gives them allocate some amount of budget, so they use the national television and also national radio to show to their agendas. And then they are also entitled to gather communities to present their agenda and also what they are going to do if they just for campaign. So that goes on until the election period due. Then after that, this is how the election process goes on. Maybe some can add.
Thank you for the question. In fact, there is no specific rules and regulation regarding the election, particularly for women. In fact, there was the commissioner was a woman who was leading the election process in the past. She is not there now. She already resigned. But we haven't heard while she encouraged women to be involved in the election or in the voting process, except those women organizations who were working in that area, including EWDNA. So we can't say something different or privilege for women voters and those who are candidates in Ethiopia.
Thank you. And Janet, just to know that there'll be a full section of the program that's dedicated to EMBs, so we can talk more about what a strong EMB looks like, what a weak EMB looks like, and how that either encourages or discourages women from participating. So now I'll hand you over to Asha.
Thank you very much. You people look so sleepy. I'm even worried. I'm told to ask you to draw coconut using your bodies. I don't know who. It is not. Come and illustrate. You can't offer something and you say no. They're up to the challenge. We are ready. We are ready for any task.
Stand up, stand up. Yes. I'm still waiting for Abel. Yes, now. So you see coconut, when you're doing coconut work. So already there's so there is the C, O, there is the C, yeah, actually you're supposed to be, this way C, O, C, O, then N, isn't it? Then up U, then T. I think I'll do that one.
Let's see who went to school now. It is now dictation. We want to know who knows how to write coconut.
Now, coconut. I shall put that microphone down. I want to see coconut. Yes. So we start inside C, O, C, O, N, U, T. I think you're now good to go, isn't it? Yes. Good.
So as Paul handles that, I want to put you in pairs of 2, just the way you're seated. Just for a minute, perhaps, as they settle, because every minute matters. And in that 1 minute or so that I am giving you, just discuss amongst the 2 of you. If you don't have a partner, migrate. Look for a partner. So the 2 of you are to discuss what we've discussed the whole day. Just a recap and your thoughts from the session in the morning to mid-morning to the first session after lunch. Just a recap. just a recap on what we've discussed today. And I'll be eavesdropping. Don't start gossiping or giving stories. It's about what we learned here. Because randomly, I'll drop the mic, and you'll tell me one thing that you have discussed. So if you don't have a partner, migrate. You're supposed to be 2, 2, 2, 2. We can adapt you. You can move here. Or you have, she's there. Now you can be 3, it's okay, that table. This table has complied. This one is complying. Just what we've discussed the whole day, what touched you. 2, 2, 2. If you don't have, you can come to me. These 2 gentlemen can be together. I can already tell those who are not discussing. And I'm just looking at them. $30 seconds to go. Time up. Okay, I think I can now open it up. The discussions have been so nice, I can tell. So randomly, two people can volunteer and say what they discussed, just randomly, so that we don't sleep. We want it to be more interactive in the afternoon. Otherwise, you'll all sleep. So I'll randomly choose if people don't volunteer. Who can assist me with the mic there? Okay. We start with him, then her. Okay.
Well, I'm lucky to discuss with Maureen because she's an awesome program manager. But from the morning up to now, what we've been discussing is about the women in leadership. We took the 3 countries' context. We saw the national figures and also women's participation, in leadership participation in Uganda, in Kenya, in Ethiopia. But what I recognized different is that Kenya and Uganda are more advanced than Ethiopia, because even though we are in Africa with the customary rules is ruling, outweighing the legal laws in general, but Ethiopia is more conservative country, and also due to the limited civic space in Ethiopia for the past at least 25 years. Our leadership, bringing women to leadership position is a bit challenging than that we have heard in Uganda and in Kenya. So the figures also show that, and lack of constitution also. So maybe Maureen can add some.
Who else wants to speak? My work is just to pass the mic around. You want to?
Okay, thank you. We have discussed today first about the status of women in leadership concerning this. Rwanda was the best and Ethiopia was the worst, especially with respect to representation of women with disabilities. And then the challenges of women to come to power was also the other agenda. The next was partners' presentation on the status of women in politics, in peace building process and other issues. And the continued part was also the challenge to come to power of women for presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's a hand behind there.
So for this table, not going into details, we were reflecting on the many things that partners are doing, great things, great interventions that partners are carrying out that make a beautiful story out of the project. And even in the midst of the challenges, we know that we are coming from somewhere in this work, and looking ahead, even in the challenges, hopeful that we'll be able to intervene in the challenges. And especially for area, she mentioned that it's quite a big difference reading about all this in the reports, in the narrative and everything, compared to hearing it from the partners themselves. It makes a very big difference because a lot of maybe things might be missed when writing the report, because you have to write up to a certain amount of words. But then when it comes to sharing here, it makes a very big difference. And maybe looking at the donor space, is there a way that donors can allow videos and have people talk about these things? And another issue is talking about beneficiaries, having the beneficiaries themselves speak of how the project has benefited them, and again, balancing between taking the stories of beneficiaries, benefiting even after they share these stories, how do they benefit at the same time? Not just getting information, then they don't get the benefits. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A very important point. Who else? Christabel?
The Vivian said what I wanted to say, but on this table we also did a general overview of what we learned in the morning. First of all, we did a context analysis of the aspects on women and leadership in the regional context, and then we went further to break down to the 3 countries that we are working in. Then we also discussed the aspect of women in politics, and also focusing on the aspect of inclusion in our various programs. Then we talked about also the successes that we can count on in the regional context. And then we looked at the challenges. We also explored opportunities that could be gotten. And then we further closed with possible recommendations on how to encourage more women to participate comfortably in the political environment.
Thank you. 2 tables. I've not heard a voice from this side. Since this is the majority, I want to hear voices, and preferably if I can get volunteers so that I don't do picky-ponky. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. We're just the 2 of us, maybe. But I believe the team will also contribute. So one of the highlights that we were discussing is the fact that I think most of the countries, we share the same challenges when it comes to women raising in these political positions and also in leadership. So we just noted that all countries had the same thing to say, especially when it comes to the societal norms and the patriarchy.
Thank you. At least the table is not letting me down. I was worried.
Okay, so Jen and I were very delighted that this session has been able to highlight that women with disability experience multiple discrimination, and we must be very intentional when programming to see how best to support them. And then we are still really concerned about the mobilizing around political parties, because in Kenya it seems that that's still the mode in which people believe they can get into positions of political leadership. So we need to then see the opportunity in terms of working with political parties to be more gender responsive, to be more inclusive. Yeah, not necessarily intermeddling in their affairs, but just ensuring that they are compliant with the law, and how to also strengthen the institutions that then regulate this political process, so that they are also very alert in terms of just ensuring the political parties are compliant with the legal provisions. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. That table has no option. At least we be fair.
Thank you so much. For me, the highlight of the day was to hear from different partners how their work is contributing to women participation in leadership. But for me, what stood out was the partners working with women with disabilities in Ethiopia and Kenya, what they are doing for the women, the spaces they are creating for the women with disabilities to participate in leadership was really key for me. Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. It's good to just internalize and see what we have done the whole day in preparation now to a key topic. Earlier in the morning when we discussed issues, I still have the flip charts. Perhaps we'll go through the legal policy framework, and we still have unfinished business. Remember, we mentioned areas that we feel if we touch or tackle, then we can be able to get solutions. So it's important to conclude and marinate on that, so that at least as we close for the day, we are able to think through and see what options, because I pray that by the end of this 3-day forum, we will be able to have more solutions, and we are geared towards now overcoming the challenges that we are facing, so that at least as we go back to our mother countries, we at least have learned 1 or 2, and we've also seen how best we can be able to solve the challenges that are thrown at us. So I'll start, I think, with the legal policy in the specific countries, that is Ethiopia, Uganda, and Kenya, for women, and of course for women also with disability. So the Ethiopian constitution provides for the principle of equality. Just like in Uganda and Tanzania, it is interesting to see that the constitution, like I told my colleagues during lunch hour, the constitutions really protect the women. In fact, most constitutions are protecting the entire population, so it is more of an inclusive document. However, we find a challenge with implementation. As you can see, Article 35 of the Ethiopian Constitution specifically guarantees the equality of women in political, economic, and social spheres. So this, of course, includes the political process that we ought to have. However, we will hear from our colleagues from Ethiopia. Perhaps, as they say in Kenya, the ground is different. It might be on paper, but the practicality, again, is different. And that's why I agree with my sister that it's good sometimes to have the one-on-one, because then even partners can hear from you, because what we read is different from what happens. So as you can see, the Ethiopian constitution clearly has Article 35. Still on Ethiopia has the electoral proclamation, and this proclamation basically governs the conduct of elections in Ethiopia. So it includes provisions that are aimed at promoting representation of women, and not only women, but also the marginalized groups. So it mandates actually political parties to allocate certain percentages to their candidates, what now they call quotas. So it is clear from the constitution, and we have the electoral proclamation in Ethiopia, that women should have a seat on the table. It's not something we are begging, but it's something enshrined in the constitution. So you can see again, like I said, it's different from the ground. The ground has something different. Still on Ethiopia, the Ethiopian country has the national policy on women. So the national policy on women includes objectives related to women's political participation. So it is broad. What this aims is to increase the representation of women in decision-making. And of course, when you talk about decision-making, key of it is the parliament, because the parliament is what actually sets the laws that we now use in different industries or different sectors, whether private, government, or any other position. So of course, this is in line with affirmative action, and Ethiopia is one of the countries that has implemented the affirmative action measures to enhance participation of women in politics. So this is a legal requirement, again, for political parties, so that they ensure a minimum representation of women in their, to ensure that there is no minimum representation of women in their candidates list. Earlier in the morning when we were discussing, we raised one of the issues that we are facing, or one of the challenges is from the political parties. I happen to sit in a political party, so I was very impressed to see how women actually have issues. I see it every day, but I'm also blessed because my political party, the party leader is Martha Karua. So at least for a woman-led political party, it becomes easier. So I was very impressed to hear that at least there are people who still see that it is possible to have a woman-led political party. So when we looked at the issues, we saw that the key issue in political parties is nomination lists, nomination fees. We come to how people are now being discriminated. You wake up in the morning, you have the certificate. By the time you go to the ballot, it has happened in Kenya. I am eager to hear if that happens in Ethiopia. So you sleep knowing you're on the ballot and you're confident, you've told the entire village, tomorrow, vote for me. Then on the material day, your name is not printed in the IBC list. So you come, you look for your name and the photo, it's not there. So these things happen, and it starts from the political party. So my challenge to you is, as you sit in political parties, we also need people, and we'll come back to that, we also need more women in political parties, not just as passive participants or contributing, but also in the decision making. So in Kenya, they normally say chama iko na wenyewe, but from where I stand, chama ina wenyewe. It's up to you to fight for your space and ensure, of course, the principles of gender equality starts from the political party. The political parties, some of you can actually advocate for, are political parties where there is that blend. If the party leader is a man, the deputy must be a woman. If the secretary general is a man, the deputy must be a woman. Very few political parties do that. That will ensure there are women at any one point at the helm of the decision-making process. So most political parties, especially in Kenya, you find it's male-dominated. Most of the biggest political parties in the country are basically run by male. That's why you see the ruling party and the main opposition party, leave the coalition parties, you find that the party, at the hierarchy, the party leader is a man, the chair is a man, the secretary general is a man, you know, the treasurer is a man. So how do you expect that man to issue a ticket to you? And some have had issues of corruption and sexual abuse. So as you can see, Ethiopia has actually measures in place. Like I said, ground, things are different on the ground, and Ethiopia will now have a chance to explain if this is true, because from the legal perspective, we have everything in place for Ethiopia. So is there goodwill from the leaders? I am keen to hear from our sisters from Ethiopian brothers. So when we come to disability rights, as you can see, Ethiopia has a disability right policy. And this policy basically is to address the rights and inclusion of persons with disability in the society. And that also includes the political participation of persons with disability. So it also comes back to what I said. The policy is there. The affirmative action is there. The constitution is there. The electoral bodies are there. So we will, at the end of these slides, discuss now what is the issue. Because the issue is not more the law. We can change the law until Jesus comes. But is there goodwill? Because from where I sit, it's more of the implementation that is a problem more than the structures in place. So I'm also eager to hear from your side. Still on Ethiopia, we have the Women's Affairs Office. So this office was established by the Ministry of Women, Children and Youth Affairs. It is basically responsible for promoting and protecting the rights of women and children. So it's also a key office because anything that touches on women, it includes also their role in terms of how they want to participate in key decision making. This includes the electoral process in election seats, elective seats, and also in the cabinet. But for this case, now we are more concerned in ensuring that at least we have more women elected. That will definitely push any government to ensure that there are more women also in cabinet. So the ministry, basically the role of that ministry is to advocate for participation of women in all quarters, including the political quarter. So just a minute. So Ethiopia is equally a country that has also ratified what we call ratification of various laws, international laws and commitments. So it has signed conventions and agreements that, including CEDAW, that promote women's rights and equal rights to persons with disability. So this, of course, with international laws, once a country ratifies an international instrument, it domesticates it to its local parliament so that it's part of the law, so it's domesticated. So Ethiopia has also managed to domesticate most of the laws that touch on women and women with disability. So in terms of the international covenants and instruments, Ethiopia has complied. What we don't know is whether they complied because it will look good to show in the international forums that we actually are in compliance. But I am keen again, like I said, to hear from our brothers whether the same is just for face purposes or the reality is now on the ground. So I will move to Uganda, but before I move to Uganda, I wouldn't want to lose touch with Ethiopia. I would like maybe to hear from you because I don't want people to sleep and I can see one is sleeping and I won't mention names. I keep secrets. But after this, my M-Pesa line is open on a light note. So I would want to hear Ethiopia. Now that you have all the laws in place, legal frameworks, international conventions, what do you think is the problem?
Thank you for explaining all the things on behalf of us. Yes, Ethiopia ratified different laws and constitutions, but the question is, how much of it is applied? And how many people knows about those laws? Even articles. Of course, Article 32 about the women is there. Yes, some people knows, but at the grassroots level, how many women understand that is a question. So, yeah. Maybe Debabe, regarding the women with disabilities or people with disabilities, the same thing happened. Is there comfortable situation to apply those laws, or is it just a paperwork that the entire people knows that Ethiopia, in Ethiopia there is affirmative action, There is women's law, even women and youth affairs. Do they properly play their role is the question. They are there for women's rights, but how many of them are standing for women? Women's voice is the question. So we have different challenges, and the reality and what is on the paper is different. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Regarding women with disability, yes, Ethiopia has beautiful laws and ratify conventions, but the big problem is the land of the law. Our country constitution doesn't have mentioned the issue or the rights of women with disability and children with disability. There is no in our constitution. You know, our constitution mentioned the issue of persons with disability in Article 41, sub-Article 5. It's the government support elders, children, and women with disability, persons with disability in general, if the capacity of the state allow. Well, this means it is a charity-based model. It is not give us for persons with disability a full right. So the big problems is regarding our constitution. The other thing is there is a high implementation gap. All in all, we don't have a accountability mechanism system. You know, who accountable for whom? So there is no accountability mechanism. Always the issue of women is hidden or shut in the box or in the shelf. There is no accountability and monitoring and evaluation system in our implementation. The other thing is regarding persons with disability. You know, Kenya and Uganda have a Disability Act, ratified the Disability Act proclamation, but Ethiopia not yet. So these issues and the other thing is lagging behind. The least amount of budget was budgeted for persons with disability issue. When we ask our right, claiming our right, there is no budget for persons with disability. Because Article 41(5) is we don't have a capacity, because it clearly mentioned in the in our constitution. So it is discriminate. We have it of conventions, this CRPD and African Disability Protocols. You know that African Disability Protocols and these optional protocols give a right to claim, even, you know, submitting or providing a compliance for the UN. So this kind of issue is still lagging our disability issues behind. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, it's Ethiopia time right now. We want to listen to you.
Zartun and Dibabe explained briefly. Just few words I just wanted to add is the problem is the enforcement problem. There is a law. We even from the morning we said there are laws, but it's not compulsory or it is not binding. So it depends on the person who holds the power. So these laws are there. In fact, for most of the laws were ratified, and the constitution is also rewritten after the downfall of the Derg regime in the EPRDF regime. But the time the civic space was narrowed is also during this period. So we can see the contradictory issues. There, on one hand, there is a constitution with good articles for the participation of women also in politics and in other affairs, and also for women with disabilities. On the other hand, there is a narrowed civic space during those years. So they have the law, and also they have the power to control. One issue is that. The other thing is the ethnic conflict and political unrest in the country since the 2018 reform divided the attention of the government not to focus on these civic issues and civic rights. Had it been that the reform continued, the political situation continued as it is, at least after opening up of the civic space in 2018, we could have seen some improvement in the implementation of the law. So these are the two major issues, I think, as the basic problem for not implementing the law. Thank you.
Thank you. My brother, your hand was also up.
Okay, thank you. Actually, majority of them are mentioned by friends, but there are also a problem maybe from the women's side also to some extent. We have tried to ask maybe our target groups on why maybe they failed to come to this leadership position. And the majority of things they have raised is, although there is, to some extent, there is a willingness from the government side, there is also this maybe low education status, and also this maybe the cultural barrier that we have mentioned in the morning, that women are mostly want to be dependent, and also society's attitude, they are passive, and the like also is maybe the problem. And also from the discussion, the awareness creation level on these rights for the women in the country is very, very low. So they are not aware of the right they have, so that maybe block them to just participate, and the others are actually raised by friends.
Thank you very much. Any other person who wants to comment outside Ethiopia now? Kenyans and Ugandans and the rest, the African continent. Any other person who has a comment on Ethiopia before we move to other countries? Perhaps before we move to Uganda, we can see the issues that come out from the legal framework in Ethiopia is the issue of the law. What does the law say versus what is in the reality? Like I said, Article 35 of the Ethiopian Constitution talks about women, them not being discriminated and being allowed active participation. However, my sister informs us that there is also another Article 41 that leaves persons with disability at the mercy of the state. From where I sit now from the legal profession, the Constitution, we can use Article 35 to flex muscles, because women is women, regardless of whether you have disability or not. So from that angle, from where I sit, is a point of strength. It might be contradictory, but the minute the law says that women should be guaranteed these rights, it doesn't matter whether it's a woman with disability or not. So what we are seeing is that the law, as it is good law. However, how it is implemented and the reality on the ground is different. So the key question should be for us, how do we amalgamate these two so that the law reflects what happens in society? Because the law is there to stay. It is what governs all of us. Regardless of the countries we come from, we are all bound by the constitution of our countries. But our actions should be mirrored, should actually take the strength from the law. So Ethiopia, and I'm sure we will see for Uganda and Kenya, this already is a problem, number one. Number two, I can give a case study of Rwanda. Rwanda enforced, the enforcement mechanisms in Rwanda are higher than in other African countries. That's why Rwanda is among the highest globally. We're not talking only on African continents. So the enforcement mechanism, the law in Rwanda is there. They passed it in 2013, but they ensured that, yes, we have the law, but it should also be the reality. So in a country like Rwanda, which I told you when you get time, you can read through how they've navigated, is that they ensured they had enforcement mechanism. From Ethiopia, what our siblings are telling us, this is also lacking. So again, as we leave here after 3 days, then we should be able to see how do we now ensure these two marionette, how do we ensure, even as partners, stakeholders, and citizens of Ethiopia, we ensure that this comes to a reality, and these two actually, in a loose language, get married, so that there's no one leaving. We are here to stay. And how best do we introduce enforcement mechanism? Whether we will use the women elected in Ethiopia or such setups, then how do we lobby to ensure enforcement in Ethiopia is done? Enforcement comes hand in hand with accountability. Who then, where does the buck stop? Who is this who's not doing their part? Is it the political parties? Is it the citizens? Is it a combination of both, the voters, the government, and the political parties? Because here, any government in any country is formed by a political party. So therefore, do our political parties in Ethiopia stand for accountability? That they can stand and say, as a political party, we have actually complied with the laws in place. And that also again comes back to the electoral body. I've not looked keenly on whether it's like Kenya, whether the buck also stops at the electoral body in Ethiopia. So again, like I said, it comes with checks and balances. Then who does the checking and who is to ensure that there are balances? My sister talked about the laws and ratification. Again, it comes back to which are these conventions should we be now lobbying for to ensure it's ratified in our different countries? So now we are discussing Ethiopia. What are these laws that Ethiopia must ratify, including the one for persons with disability? So how do we now ensure it's ratified? We will now bring it to a plenary where people will now give solutions. But like I said, the first one is now using the platforms we have, even with elected leaders, to see how best this can be brought to Parliament for ratification. I'm sure this cuts across board, the budget on women with disability. Again, I'll open it for plenary. How best do we now get a budget allocation for these special women so that they also are not affected by the decisions we make as citizens of individual countries? Like I shared with some of you over lunch, persons with disability, regardless of the gender, whether they are female or male, have suffered from also mental anguish because of the discrimination from society. So it's not only specific to women. In Kenya, when we get there, I'll show you the data, there was a decline. And we are talking overall now, both male and female, there was a decline. Yet, there are provisions of the law that protect them. Of course, we spoke about the Constitution being the guiding principle and pillar. My brother talked about unrest and internal conflict and awareness. So before I wrap up for Ethiopia, these are the challenges, unless someone can remind me, we add another, that we've seen we face in the legal framework. I'm now opening this to contributions on how best do you think we can help our siblings in Ethiopia get solutions to this. Perhaps your countries have had solutions, so it's a learning experience. So feel free to share on how you can pick any that you feel you have a solution to. And I'm sure our counterparts in Ethiopia will appreciate, and they can put it in writing, and perhaps once they go home, they can see how best to fast track. Because we are here to see not only the problem, but how do we solve it? Because if we give you only the problems and we live here, we've not helped. Because when you are coming here, I'm sure most of you knew the problems we have. But we are here to put our heads together and see how best then we can get solution to some of these problems. So I'm opening it up, and I am willing to walk around because I want to hear the solutions. My sister here, thank you.
So, I don't know if this is a possibility in Ethiopia. In Kenya, we have a saying, kwa ground iko different, which means on the ground, the things are different. So in Kenya, I know we're constantly suing the government. FIDA is one of them who's constantly suing the government over the 2/3 gender rule. There are also other minority groups in Kenya, like who are also doing strategic litigation, CRR, Katiba Institute. So there's constant litigation to ensure that the law and the reality match. I don't know how much that is a thing that's open to Ethiopia to kind of get that kind of law versus reality to match, and then the enforcement. It might not be possible, but it would be great to hear from our Ethiopian.
Perhaps someone wants to respond to that. What you think, is that possible? We are just trying to see if we can get a few solutions. Ethiopia, has anyone tried? Let us know. She has given a solution to the problem. We were discussing the law versus reality. She's given a solution that, have you people tried litigating, going to court to just ensure that the government complies with the laws in place already?
Like Network of Ethiopian Women Association, they are trying to challenge this situation, even with women in parliament, women ministers, and with the government also. And the same thing is going on with EWLA, Ethiopian Women Lawyers Association. So convincing, the advocacy work should be strengthened, I think. That is what all women organizations should work on. This, I think, is the idea, and Fikado.
Okay, yes, Zariye. The second one is, yes, enforcing mechanism is very nice. Why currently the civic space was opened? Why we are establishing a coalition, closely working or pushing the government to inclusive or included the participation, increasing the participations of women in inclusive Ethiopian national dialogue. The other thing is currently Ethiopian Women's with Disability Association, including in collaboration with Federation of Persons with Disability and other disability associations, we drafting a Ethiopian Disability Act regarding persons with disability. So the EWDNA strongly engaged in regarding the inclusion of the issue of women and children with disability in this Comprehensive Disability Act. So this Disability Act now it is submitting to the Ministry of Justice, maybe in this year, in 2016 Ethiopian calendar, after the opening of our parliament in October 30 in Ethiopian, September 30 in Ethiopian calendar, maybe one of the expected ratified proclamations maybe. So there is a progress, even working, advocating about the issue of women's. Now it is possible, and even all women rights organizations have the issue, the weekly, the monthly, and the annual discussion forum weekly through Zoom. So nowadays things should be improved. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Maybe in this regard, to just curb this law and reality, as I have said, mainly this awareness is a problem. At the local level, we were giving this training on CEDAW and other Maputo protocol, which was accepted by Ethiopia. But when we assess, even the implementers doesn't have this maybe knowledge about whether Ethiopia has really accepted this one or not. So when these victims are coming, although Ethiopia has accepted this, they were not giving the appropriate maybe justice for them. So we are creating maybe awareness, and the legal officers are giving this training for them, and as Ethiopia has accepted. So we are working on this especially to just solve this reality and maybe the practical situation on the ground. So this is the one, and also we are identifying some even gaps relating this women's right, and we have identified yet some 6 or 8 gaps, and we are trying to communicate on the process of communicating to the legislative bodies and maybe to implement in the future. So maybe these are some of the things that we are doing. But if we do, especially on the awareness, I think we can even solve the problem. There's both sides for me, the problem. One is from the government side, the willingness only, and the other is the serious, is the awareness from the maybe other side. So we as an awesome project is maybe hugely doing on this awareness side and also contributing to the change in policy.
Thank you very much. So we are getting solutions. I'm waiting for the mic. We are getting solutions. One is, of course, my sister had said to litigate. You can use an individual or a body or even the civil society groups. You've raised the issue of creating awareness that most people don't know their rights. So it's important. I think Kenyans overknow their rights, so it becomes easier for us. Everybody knows how to go to court, so we no longer have jobs. Then there's the engage the women politicians. I had suggested that it's good, especially on matters that touch ratification and enforcement, so that they can table the bills to be implemented to law. I'd like to hear your...
Okay, mine is about budget.
Yes.
Budget on WWD.
Yes.
I'm going to share our experience in Uganda, how we do it. I don't know how Ethiopians do it.
Yes.
So in Uganda, we are intentional to participate in the budget process. Budget processes run from the grassroots up to the national level. So if we have an issue that we want to make it to the budget at local level, we have to make sure we participate in those spaces that are provided. I don't know if you have such spaces in Ethiopia. Now at national level, there are those issues that you cannot just put into the budget unless you engage the committees of parliament. So what we do as an organization is first of all, we develop position papers. Our positions on different issues. For example, if it is people with disabilities, okay, we have done position papers on funding for SGBV, and then we seek to, we present them in the Gender, Labor and Social Development Committee for Parliament. We get the space, present our position paper with commitments, with what we want them to do. And before we leave that space, we have to get a commitment from them, even if it is one. And then we shall follow up on that. So I think for issues to do with budget, they need to be intentional in participating in budget processes in Ethiopia. They are open to citizens, they are open to CSOs. Yes.
Thank you very much. If I get you correctly, you're saying we utilize our power as a common man, or whether it's a body or an individual, and you can reach out, like I said, Parliament, especially for the committees and the women parliamentarians, those are your low-hanging fruits. So yes. If it is a budget thing, you can appear before the budget committee for Kenya, and I'm sure for the other countries, and table and say, this a very good table, so that you can get commitment, as you said, whether this will be budgeted. And also, I think for all other matters, it is easier if you have a bill or a policy to present it to either the committee, specific committee, if it is something touching on sexual harassment in workplaces, because these things still affect, and even in political circles, either to the committee specific in Ethiopia, in parliament, or to the women political heads, or women who are now elected, who are now in parliament, so that you can lobby through it. So we would want to hear maybe if that.
Lastly, we have done this work for like quite long. If any partner in Ethiopia would like to, if they develop a position paper and they would like to share it with us, just to point them, to just guide them. Maybe this is missing, bring out this, we are happy to help at any time.
Woo, can we give a clap to the beautiful lady? You have now gotten, please engage her on the side also. In terms of policies, if you want something, it's good. We are all here to learn. So she's offered, and I'm sure you will not hesitate to try this. But I don't know if that will be possible in Ethiopia, because maybe that's the reality in Uganda and Kenya. But it's good to also hear if that is the same in Ethiopia. Is there a space for citizens to engage the committees in parliament, or even to engage the women elected?
The problem is, you said when you're listing the favorable condition, you talked about the women affairs. The women affairs are politically appointed, and they fulfill, or they just fulfill the agenda of the ruling party. So I doubt if they can really represent the majority of the women, because we've been working with them at the higher level, at middle level, and at lower level. Always their agenda is the agenda of the ruling party. So I doubt if they can represent the women to take the issue to the parliament level. And actually, we have a program which is called social accountability, that putting the citizen as the driver's role to demand the service providers hold accountable. They are doing this, and then they have also a process where community participate in the budgeting process, particularly the gender responsive budgeting. We do this exercise at various levels, but whenever the budget is allocated, it's a top-down, and then they just allocate certain amount of money. In the women affairs and different sector offices at a district level, they are handicapped. They don't have budget. They couldn't even fight for the office, not let alone fighting for the community. So these are the challenges we have in Ethiopia.
Maybe I don't know the exact, I was outside, but on the point at Galalchari, there is one good thing, if you read, I don't know, that gender mainstreaming in Ethiopia, and also there is a budget for that. I think we can do, there is separate budget for that, and that's for gender integration, for gender equality and parity, and other activity that we do in the government office. And also there is a department. So if we work with them in the future, and if you engage them, if we make them to allocate some budget also for maybe to make women participate in this electoral process, I think this is a good opportunity for us. It exists in Ethiopia. Like an affirmative action, there is also this gender mainstreaming budget. All sector from the Warada level are forced to have some budget for this. So I think we can do on this one, yeah.
Thank you, so it's doable. She has a comment.
If I heard you right, you participate in the budget process, right? But up here, the battle is lost. Is that what you say?
Just a minute, I think. Let me give the two of you so that the rest
Yeah, it's a budget hearing process from the lower, from the base, from the community, coming to the Kabale level, to the district level, and then to the zonal level, and to the parliament level.
Yes.
But when the budget is allocated, they don't consider those questions.
I get you. You know, it's one thing participating from here up to up. But up here, there is somewhere where us citizens we do not see it. You need to have champions that speak for you up there. So identify, okay, for example, let me say, as FOWODE, we identified women or parliamentarians whom we know that they are gender champions. In their case, I can say champions for women with disabilities up there. And when the budget is being discussed, before it is passed, when it is being discussed in those committees, they will stand firm on your issues and they will not let go. That is the trick that we do. So I think that is why you see that you put your issues up here, but when the budget is approved, your things are not anywhere. You need to identify champions to work with at different levels, but most importantly in Parliament. Yes.
Thank you very much. I would want to second her as we give my sister the mic. I also think it is doable. Like in Kenya, you might not necessarily get a person with disability to support because sometimes they don't have enough numbers in parliament, but you get for champions. There are men outside there or women outside there who are elected, but who are passionate on a cause. That if you sit them down and take them through and tell them this is what would request you to stand with us, most of them will do, and it is better to try than to think it won't come. So my prayer is that we keep knocking each door until we make it to where we want to go, the promised land. Otherwise, if we try and hesitate and say it won't happen, maybe luck will shine on us and heaven will align, and so it is doable. So if we can try in Ethiopia and try and talk to the parliamentarians, we've listed it as a solution, and the specific committees in parliament, and get them and share with them what you want, and then pick people who you know can advocate for it. Actually help you lobby. The right word to use is actually lobby. Who can lobby for you? Because it happens also in Kenyan parliament. When we have an issue, we actually take it to the specific committee, and then from the committee we also look for people who, when it is brought to the floor of the house, can stand. Whether they are male, female, or any other person, but someone who can stand. My sister, I'd like to hear your contribution.
Okay, thank you. The Plan Commission of Ethiopia were prepared a 10-year action plan for all sector ministers, for all sector offices. So as women rights organizations and as disability rights organizations, we submitting our contributions, and even we commenting the inclusion of women and the inclusion of women with disability, not only about budget, even in the 10th year action plan of Ethiopia, we were commenting and participating as women rights organization and as a woman. The problem is during budget, ratifications of the budget, you know, the budget is divided by the Ministry of Economy and Finance Bureau. The Ministry of Economy and Finance Bureau were collecting annual budget from each sector office during March or February for the beginning of Ethiopian New Year. At that time, you know, there is no a chance to participate in, there is no a public saying platform or this commenting system. But we as human rights organizations, especially as EWDNA, after we working with women parliamentarians and gender caucus group and social standing committee, you know, always we working, especially starting from 2021 with the support of AWESOME project, you know, we provided our question for this women which represented in the big parliament. Regarding the Ministry of Women and Social Affairs, you know, annually they prepared and provided their specific budget for sector offices. EWDNA also was participating and commenting. But the problem is currently, you know, there is a conflict everywhere in our country. All the development budgets went to purchasing the guns, the weapons. So why the government is in crisis and all the budgets go to the war? This is the issue.
Thank you. You can add. Yes. Before we move.
Thank you, Sarah. Really, I would like to thank you so much for sharing your experience and encouraging us to engage these people in the parliament or elected women. While doing the awesome project, Siiqqee got opportunity to be nearer to these elected women because we have sessions with them to discuss. So this is a good opportunity for us to know each other, to be near them. It was not there before. Before the awesome project we started, we were just working at the grassroots with the women. But this time, these days, we got opportunity to get their view, their opinion. So as Sarah said, it's good to have someone in the parliament up there to be a representative, a voice for our women. So we will apply this advice you gave us. So thank you, really.
Thank you very much. Any other solution for Ethiopia before we cross to Uganda? Any other comment, solution? We've highlighted the issues. Then we also highlighted possible solutions. Like we said, we don't want to live here with problems only. Even though African continent we are seen with more problems, but we are trying now to change the narrative so that we are more solution-based than always giving out our issues. Any other before we move to Uganda? Okay, so we move to our sister, Sarah. Move to your territory. So Uganda, like any other country like Ethiopia, also the constitution guarantees equal rights and opportunities for its citizens, and regardless of the gender, whether male or female. Specifically, Article 32 promotes affirmative action in favor of marginalized groups, including women and people with disabilities, to ensure they participate in the political process. So affirmative action itself, Uganda implemented it to increase the participation of women in political offices. The 1995 constitution reserved seats specifically for women in parliament. So women were ideally elected from each district with one woman representative per district. So you can see, again, like Ethiopia, we have the constitution, and the affirmative action is also in sync in their laws. Uganda also has a national gender policy, which actually provides a comprehensive framework. This framework is basically for promoting gender equality and women empowerment. It also includes provisions to enhance women in participation in political process and decision-making. Again, like you see, they also have the gender policy framework in place. Of course, we also see Uganda having good electoral laws that are favorable. So the Electoral Commission in Uganda normally oversees the election, subject to also these other countries, Ethiopia and Kenya. And they have regulations to ensure the inclusion of the marginalized, and the marginalized here also includes women and people with disability. So, of course, the electoral laws have provisions in place for accessible to polling stations, accommodation for people with disability, to enable participation in election, just like any other country. Even Kenya has the same in place from the electoral body. Now, political parties, where we said we have a problem across the board. So political parties and organizations, we look at political parties, they have provisions in the law that are meant to aim to promote gender equality within the political parties. So this is basically to encourage women participation in politics and also in the structures, because that's also important. We see also, just like Ethiopia, the civil society and advocacy. We have Sarah here doing a good job. So we have various civil society organizations and women groups in Uganda that work very hard day and night to ensure political participation of women. So they engage in voter education, capacity building like these ones, and much more to support the process. So despite, again, like Ethiopia, despite the good policy frameworks and legal provisions, we still face problem in active political participation. So it cuts across again. Because of issue of cultural, we already mentioned in the morning, cultural barriers is one, violence another, limited resources. But of course we can see slight improvement And in the morning, I told you Uganda had tried to also move to ensure also cabinet. And that's why we said there was an outcry in Uganda, whether the cabinet now, yes, it has women, but is it women of caliber as they put it? So again, like Uganda, like Ethiopia, we still have the same challenges. Perhaps because I know Uganda is similar to Kenya, you'll allow me to also go through Kenya? Or do you want, we can do Uganda specifically, see the problems Uganda is facing? I think that will be more fair, and the challenges, so that we finish with the host country. So I'm opening it for plenary. What do you think? I was writing down, do they have the same law versus reality? Team Uganda, you're the ones who know your ground better. As we just read it with caution. Because we are known as a country on a light touch, we actually disturb our kettles are seen this other side, and they take the Nyankore cows. So we don't want problems. So on a light touch now, you can share. So is this the situation also? Does the law and reality have a conflict, that you have good laws somehow, but implementation is zero? You can hear her, or I can share my mic. I don't know where the other one went to.
If we could implement all the beautiful policies and laws, I think we would be a model country in the world. So we keep arguing that if any other country came out of nowhere and didn't do anything about policy and the legal framework and just took our documents and implemented them, they would be a super country. So the challenge is with the implementation. And that's why I was also hesitant to celebrate when my country ratified ILO 190 that, you know, under AWESOME we've been advocating for. I am worried about domestication, and I think that's why we are going to take our campaign now to ensure that now the implementation actually happens. So yeah, the law versus reality. It is, I think, the same in many countries. Yeah.
Okay, so it's also a same problem. We found one solution from my sister here. Is litigation open to Ugandan quarters, or in 256 you try it at your own risk? You know, you should also coach. I don't want you to leave here and say, you know, when we discussed as awesome women, we said we'll go litigating. Then you are found tortured there. So we should also, so we should actually get solutions tailor-made for you, because your situation is a bit different. So you'll allow me, we help. But before we get, okay, I can write that one down. What do you think is the solution for them, for law versus reality? Because I can tell the environment is not so conducive for you to try and Okio Mutata there. For those who don't know, in our country, there's a very good senator. Before he became a senator, he used to be a civic person, so he used to take most of the cases on behalf of Kenyans, and we celebrate him. So this is not a reality. How then do we, and now it's open to everyone, it's not for +256 only. How do we help our siblings in Uganda? How do they now bridge this law versus reality? I don't know where is the other mic. Oh, thank you.
Maybe also to sort of guide the conversation is we mostly want to learn from Kenya. What did you do? How did you guys get Moi? Arap Moi, I think he was the longest serving.
Yes.
How did you eventually get, I'm not going to say rid of him, but if we could learn the tactics that were used, because you didn't break out into violence or war, so we want to know what happened, what did Kenyans do to ensure that transition from Moi to, you know, the next president, let's for now put aside the violence that has also marred the Kenyan elections over the years, but just that transition, because, I mean, I was born into the regime that is there currently. My children are growing into the same regime. Like, I don't even have the confidence to tell them about different leadership. So if I could, it's sad, it's funny and sad at the same time. So if we could learn, was it civil society? Was it just, I don't know. So if we could start from there, probably, we would then transition to implementing the laws that we have, because the political will is not there. Yeah. So I'm handing the mic to Kenyans.
I'm here. Let me attempt on behalf of Kenyans. I remember the last time when we had elections, I was in Uganda. I think was it awesome? I think we had this learning event, and I was speaking to some Ugandans who were telling me that in Uganda, before you even cast your vote, you already know the result. So for me, I see a problem with the election management. Yeah. So you guys need to interrogate the kind of people who go into that management. Then for me, it's also about you know, accountability, because I believe that if you are elected into a public space, you know that you have a duty. You have, you know, an integrity first as a person, and then the accountability to the people, and the fact that this is just a delegated responsibility. And it also then speaks to the culture, you know, and the attitudes of the people. So how can we have conversations around, because for me, I believe that the power belongs to the people. It is the people to revolutionize, for lack of any better word, things. And I've seen the attempts from what Bobi Wine has done, from what Besigye has done, and the goodwill is there. But for me, I see the problem in just a few individuals who have what we called state capture that can just be transformed. Yeah, it's about just the will. And in my opinion, it starts right from the people who manage the elections. Because the moment you say no, yeah, there's a lot of things that play, because it is very unfair that someone can wake up to go and exercise their right to vote, and then the vote does not count. It's just very unfair. And it's because of, my opinion, I don't know, maybe the ground is different, because of certain individuals who've just decided that, you know what, we got this state, we've captured it. And they're just individuals. Yeah, I think so.
There is a hand there.
Okay, I will also want to say something, okay. Then I'll hand over the mic to you. So probably a more agendaed approach will be to push for constitutional review process. When talk about the reason why I will term the constitutional review process as a more agendaed approach to handling your problem, it will go beyond Museveni. Museveni is not really the problem. You get the point? You see, he will come and go. No one is there to stay forever. He will come and go. And nature is usually very gracious. It makes sure that people age, and you age, you phased out. You get the point? It might take long in the political sense, but at the end of the day, you live. So the conversation is not about MM. It's about having a more gendered approach in terms of like, you have to identify the key issues that should inform the constitutional review process, the political structures, what are the principles that you want to, on which then you want to contextualize your governance as a country, and that kind of thing. Of course, you asked the question, how did Kenya manage to ensure that the late president, Daniel Toroitich arap Moi, bow out of power? Well, it was a number of things, but one of them was the aspect of the constitutional review process. Of course, there's the international, there was the international pressure for information. And of course, there's also the aspect that Kenyans were waking up. You get the point? There's that element of like people waking up gradually, slowly. And of course, this only happens when you are very consistent with the debate that identifies the challenges that a country faces. And then don't make it individual issue. You get the point? Yeah, I think if you don't make it individual issue, because you see, we leave, the sun probably take over. You get the point? So if you make it a personal issue, then you'll actually be fighting a wrong battle. Yeah.
Sorry,
so
Pio, just on your point.
Yes.
I would like you to maybe just comment on then why they were not even able to review the presidential term. Yeah? You remember the discussion around you guys having a term limit for your president? Like for Kenya, it's 2 terms, right?
2 terms, yes. 5 years.
It didn't go through in Uganda. Why? State capture.
Yeah, but still a debate about constitutional process. Thank you.
So should Jackie go first, then I'll go. Kenyans, we can't stop talking about politics. We love it. We love it.
Yeah. I may repeat some of the things that have been said, but first, politics. I think Kenyans, when the election is won, we start campaigning for that, for the next president, like hours later. So I think for me, it's the game of politics and how we have learned it all through, even picking from the late President Moi and how people referred to him as the master of politics. I think learning from him, maybe learning his weaknesses and taking advantage of that. And again, the opposition coming together and really forming a strong, what do I call it, force, and being able to convince the citizens who are already tired. And I think one of them, someone has spoken about even the how people's mind were continually being changed. I think everything happened at the right time. When people were very tired, they were able to talk freely without fear and other people even paying the price for a very long time. I think everything came up at the same time. Yeah, I think those are the points, but we are politicians. Yeah.
Yeah, so Jackie has basically said it, and Paul, it was like a confluence of a lot of things. As a person who kind of grew up in that era and had a lot talked about, people were tired. People were tired. And our politics at the time, and still now I feel, is very tribal. So as long as the tribes were divided, it was very easy for Moi to continue to rule. But once it, like all the tribes kind of came together, because everybody was like sort of felt that equal kind of oppression. Yeah, so that's that kind of groundswell, and also the fact that people had been, like civil society had been working, the political parties had been working. It's almost a situation we've never seen again in Kenya. Like the civil society agreeing, the political class agreeing, the tribes agreeing, the international community supporting, the people being so tired. Because I think what we see now is some people are tired, some people are like very happy to continue with the status quo. So I think like for Uganda, it would be good to hear where are the people, where is civil society? Is it also like a very big, is tribe a big thing in Uganda? Yeah, and I think because all those factors played a role. What is the international community's role? Although I see Museveni very much pushing back against any donor who tries to say anything about his term. I hear him like speaking really strongly about sort of international interference. So it would be good to know, like from Uganda, who supports him, who doesn't support him.
Just to add a little, one point is that I think when one is also tired, you are likely to mess yourself. So he also messed himself the last days because he had strong support, but again he chose the candidature for the presidency. So, and that made some people walk away from him because they were expecting him to be kind of democratic, to have a democratic process for people to choose the, and so when they got divided, they came to the other side and formed a very strong coalition, just like what Maureen is saying, because our political parties were founded on tribal basis. So all those tribal parties came together. And so that's how it messed, because they say when the monkey is about to die, all the trees become. So I think that's what happened to him.
I'm still on state capture. Why would Museveni just switch off internet? You know? Why would he just switch off internet and no one does anything to him? Yeah, so I still believe that there's a lot of integrity that needs to come into play, and people just understand their role and know what to do, what is right. And this will come with a lot of just, you know, if they have that assurance that we got your back, like you'll not lose your job for doing what is right. The last time I also heard about the extrajudicial killing, you know, is it a speaker who was just abducted and then he died? Was it a speaker or what? I was told some politics like that. So I believe that for Uganda, you guys.
I have the mic. So I'd say Kenya really transitioned on two things. One, on social media. Kenyans, the fact that we have the freedom of speech, it has really helped us, mostly Kenyans on Twitter. Like it's actually the place that everything happens. So getting ideas, getting information, Kenyans on Twitter, that has really supported us. Then the second one, in Kenyan politics, there are no permanent enemies and permanent friends. So like we don't pick one person, then you stick there forever. So you get, today we are friends, tomorrow I'm against you, I'm not supporting you. So that has really opened our mind for getting ideas for more people on who to choose. So that one, the two have been a great change for Kenya, for Kenyan politics.
I forgot something. Very quickly, two things. I think also, hope is not lost for Uganda, because we say that someone can fight you can fight for so long, but then there's that time that comes that however much one tries, because I think even for the late President Moi, I think he had reached that point that he could not fight the force so much. It's like he had started retreating, so it was not really so much force from him. Yeah, so I think even for your president, maybe it's just a matter of time. So the point again, how prepared are Ugandans, or even and I'm speaking from a point maybe of ignorance, the relevant bodies, the structures, how prepared is Uganda for the new that will eventually come? Yeah.
Okay, maybe just to answer some questions that have been coming through as the different sisters and brothers were giving us strategies is one, about the people in electoral management bodies. So the electoral commissioners are all appointed by the serving president. And that is something that would need to change. So no amount of noise from the voters would have the appointing authority change who he has appointed. So if I'm appointing you to manage now my elections, really, you have to do what is in my best interest and your own best interest. So it starts from there. And then Maureen was asking about the union and the coalition of opposition and the different tribes. So the person of President Museveni has been very successful because he has managed to ensure division, and it's easy to divide and then rule. And so there is division along religious lines, division along tribes. That is very strong, and that is why Bobi Wine gained traction in Buganda region and not anywhere else in the country, because they moved propaganda that, you know, they're going to kill the rest of you because you people have been in, in leadership for this long, so people would rather be safe with the person they know than checking whether the propaganda is true. And yet, Bobi Wine is actually in an intertribal marriage, but you know, that's quickly forgotten. Also, taking it beyond the person of President Museveni is that it's now deeply rooted within the citizens. If you look at parliament, for example, it's just selfish persons in these spaces, and not really the president. There are many things people do, and maybe it's because it's been the overstay in power that has made it seem okay, but the things that our parliamentarians do, and I think the moment Ugandans actually wake up, they're going to start with the Parliament of Uganda and not the person of the president. Yeah, so that's, you know, those are, I think, the biggest things, because they're the ones who say yes to the rape of the constitution. They're the ones who say yes to taxes. You know, they tax you through the nose. They're the ones who say yes to every bad thing that is happening in Uganda. Also, the opposition keeps divided because today we have a strong Sarah who is saying, no, we need to change this, we need constitutional reforms. And then the next day you read that Sarah received 200 million, has been appointed ambassador to the US, and she has changed everything she used to write on social media to say Museveni abewo, meaning Museveni should stay. So we have now opportunists and people pretending that they are for the people until money speaks. So people are even using it as an opportunity. You go on social media, you make noise, say outrageous statements, and then the next day they call you to State House. I mean, after 24 hours, your tone completely changes. So you are right to sort of sigh and say, Uganda, state capture. But yeah, I think we are going to get to that boiling point, because now how Ugandans react to every injustice is through memes, through laughter. Like, we are at that stage where we just turn our misery into some sort of comedy and then move on like nothing happened. Maybe Sarah can also give a different perspective. But thank you so much for the different ideas.
Yes, it's more like the same. It's about the political patronage, rewarding people because of their electoral support. In most cases, you've heard that our constitution has been raped. All the constitutional reforms that are pro the current government, there has been a reward that has come with it. So you would just hear that, for example, 80% of these members of parliament have voted in favor of a certain constitutional reform that is anti-people. And in fact, you'd find that even the opposition parliamentarians, whom you would expect they would be the other side, they are also part of the 80%. It's because of the rewards. So yeah.
Thank you very much. I can listen to Ethiopia.
Kenyans, because a problem also in our country is previously the ruling party was a minority from the north. They were ruling for 27 years, and two major ethnic groups, they came together and they have maybe removed the ruling party, that's a minority, but they failed to sustain this maybe collaboration. So I want to just really learn, this is a major problem, still we are in conflict. And even to some extent, we are starting these two major ethnic groups in the country, even started some conflict. So how did you just sustain those maybe collaboration of this ethnic group? And the other one is as a good solution I have heard. In our country also we feel maybe that we are not confident on those institutions, especially the election and the like. So we have raised maybe to question the management of electoral process. So if you raise any question or some comment on those institutions, as they are really subordinate or supporting the ruling party, so if you raise any maybe looting of the ballot and any other thing, you will go to prison, and even the opposition and any other person if you raise that. So maybe how did you do that maybe in building such a trusted and independent institution if possible maybe? Yeah. That's the problem in our country also, in implementation. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I give Maureen to respond and the Kenyan delegation, because I think the question was posed to you, perhaps I can just have a quick on this for my sisters in Uganda. So, first of all, you've raised the issue of elections, which is pertinent because you seem to have free elections, but the question is whether it is fair, because those are two different things. I can give you elections and say, as awesome, decide if you're giving me the vote. So I put the ballot boxes, but the question is it fair? So that I think is to address, because the fairness in African context has happened, is what the issue is. Now, when my brother Paul spoke about constitutional review, this is key, and it doesn't start with the term limit only. You start with small things like freedom. Because if you're fighting a dictator, you don't start with something that hits his doorstep. You start from the neighboring. Because once the platform for your rights, the human rights have been safeguarded and freedoms have been safeguarded, you're a closer inch to coming now to the term limit. Again, it is interesting, and unfortunate she's just stepped out. Uganda had a crisis, I think, with the military juntas in the West. There was already fear in Rwanda and Uganda. So Uganda is one of the countries that did an overhaul in the military. Immediately make noise in Gabon, Ali Bongo was ousted. So it is interesting to see the dynamics. And my request to all my siblings here in this forum is that you keep abreast with the African context. What is happening in the Africa, because it seems to be like a wave for the dictators. So with the West now rising, the key question remains, will the military juntas keep their word to hold the country as interim, or there'll also be another form of new dictators? So that development is interesting. Also with our neighboring Zimbabwe, it's interesting to read how the dynamics take place. So again, awareness is important. My honest opinion is that once we achieve the rights and freedom through constitutional review, it creates awareness. So that means civil societies and stakeholders now can raise awareness. But if this in Uganda has been stripped off, it becomes difficult for anyone to penetrate and do awareness. So again, it comes back here. My sister talked about politics in Kenya being a job. For us, it's a daily job. As we finish election today, we are already thinking. In fact, the day we are voting, and I saw that in the last election, while we are voting at the polling station, we're already budgeting for 2027. We're already done with this. Our eyes are there. And that also explains why we have economic crisis, because we don't have time to think about economic empowerment. We are thinking about eyes on the ballot. So taking politics as a job has an advantage, because it means you critique, you look at the laws, you look at any area that has a problem. And like our counterparts in Uganda who just rest, then you will see Bobi Wine very active and Kizza Besigye very active towards the election campaign. But in the 5 years, you will not hear Bobi Wine, you will not hear Kizza Besigye. So they are just relaxing and waiting for election campaign. And also that has a ripple effect, because there are quarters that believe they are also paid to just continue with the circus. So that's a story for another day. But we take the job seriously. And like I said, this gives you ammunition to fight. So you're able to touch base. Now, the role of opposition, you asked about Moi, and it was interesting. The opposition, this point is interjoined with the issue of the handover that my sister spoke about. Museveni has already declared indirectly that his son Muhoozi is the rightful heir to the throne. I call it a throne. However, we still have a problem. Someone like Kizza Besigye, who fought for Uganda's liberation for a very long time, cannot work with Bobi Wine, who I see is also emerging. And other opposition leaders, at least those two we know. I'm sure there are others. So again, it comes back to the role of opposition. Have you, as civil societies and groups, also seen ways? In Kenya, like we said, it's a job. We actually force them. It happened in 2002. It happened even in the last election, where my sister Maureen and I had different political divides, but it is other people who force us to work. We might not love each other, but we have to work. So again, it comes back to that. For me, also in Moi's era, you asked about it. I don't know the situation of the economy in Uganda, but economics in any country plays a pivotal role. If the economy is not doing any better, hungry citizens and angry citizens make the worst decisions. That explains why it is only in Africa where military coups are celebrated. So the Europeans are actually shocked, and people who love democracy and liberalism are questioning, where do we see democracy going in Africa? So it is because this has not been settled. So you pardon us sometimes if you see us on the streets, it's because we are fighting the price of unga. Its economics for Kenyans are quite close to the heart. Then unity in interests. Civic societies, my advice, and the groups should actually see what you can work in common and partner, so that such engagements also help you get this. This was very particular for me in Uganda and Zimbabwe, because voters, the regimes were very clever. The incumbents ensured high turnout in rural areas, because those people are not educated, they're illiterate. So you'll see in Uganda and Zimbabwe, in the villages, the turnout is 90%. Polling stations are opened at 6. Yes, in fact, they're open at even maybe slightly earlier than 6. But then in the capital cities and cities where people have gone to school and want to exercise their rights, they make sure they open the polling stations at 4 p.m. and close at 6. So that is to limit their voter turnout. So it is important as women leaders to see which category should we now fight to ensure. Because if you lock out the urban, and in fact, it's not only Zimbabwe and Uganda, even our neighboring Nigeria suffered the same casualty. With the leading opposition candidate, him being very strong in urban centers, was locked out. So the election occurred there for 2 hours. The same with Zimbabwe. They opened, I think, at 3:30 and closed at 6, whereas in the villages, they opened very early. So it is important to look at this. My sister talked about state capture. State capture can only be achieved, it's work in progress. So for our sisters in Uganda, it starts with you and another Ugandan and another Ugandan. Look at your economy, look at pertinent things that can drive your agenda home. And of course, there's a lack of goodwill. It has also happened in Kenya. Sometimes even the opposition, who we expect to do checks and balances, are given some handouts. So in the floor of the House, they say, in fact, add the taxes. It has happened. It's not only in Uganda, but in Kenya. But luckily, I tell Kenyans, they have the right to recall. The Constitution allows, if I see Maureen has gone, to shake hands with Sarah there, and you're going to get money, and you're now not serving my interests as Trump, I just make sure I get 1,000 votes, signatures, and I send you home on a right to recall. Unfortunately, Kenyans are too tired to go that angle, so I look forward to that day. Then issue-based politics. My last advice to Uganda, concentrate on the issues, not the individual, as Paul said. Issues, talk about your economy in Uganda, talk about rights, but don't touch Museveni for now, unless you want to be found there in the forest, and you don't say my Kenyan sisters told me otherwise. So there were questions from my brother I would want to give Maureen, and then if there are any other questions, then we can tackle before we close for the day. We will do, I think, Kenya tomorrow because of time. So I think I can give Maureen, if there's any other question, I can go around with the other mic.
My Kenyans, you better be ready. You had a lot of solutions. So tomorrow you better be ready. So to answer your question for Kadu, so yes, there was the joining of people in 2002, but if you know the history, we had post-election violence in the next round. And that was stopped for several reasons. I think one was strong intervention by the international community. Kenya is kind of a strategic hub, you know, the Indian Ocean, close to the Arab cities, a lot of foreign investment here. It's almost their entry point into East Africa. So there was a lot of that kind of interest. And then also the government that was formed in 2007 was now a coalition government. So, was it 2007? It was a coalition government. So it was kind of an amalgamation of the opposition and the Nusumkate, okay? Yeah, if you're Kenyan, if you're Kenyan, it was like half and half. Half and half, yeah. Half and half. And I think that also worked to stem at least the issues that existed. However, those issues are still underlying. Like, I would tell a lie that it wasn't underlying. There's still issues with our electoral management systems, but as you heard, Kenyans are political animals, so people are taking the government to court. People are trying to get changes in the IEBC. So I think the fight continues. So Kenyans are always fighting and drawing back. Sometimes the election violence is close to the election. Sometimes it's now like this time in this latest election. The election happened peacefully. The Supreme Court happened peacefully, but then now we're in maandamano and we're in serious political campaigns and we're in serious agitation. Kenyans are agitated and they're a bit frustrated and a bit tired. So as it was said, it's a job, so we don't feel like political fighting is a hard thing, and we're all interested. So I think that's kind of what also helps maybe move things forward, yeah. And we don't know whether the tribal issues will come up again. They might not come up in the next election or the next election, but they might come up in another election at some point. Any other Kenyans?
I think I want to comment on that. The other issue is also consistency. Like we said, it's a day-to-day job for us. So you can see our leader of opposition for a very long time has maintained the charisma. So for Raila, it's a day-to-day job. It's not that even if we go the Nusumukate way, I'll still be in circulation. So Kenyans somehow tend to see Raila any day, any time within the political cycle. Whether he's working with the government or in his opposition capacity, you still feel the presence. Unlike in most African countries, look at what happened in Nigeria, who had elections slightly after us. Peter Obi is nowhere to be seen. He'll resurface again at the election cycle. Go to just down here, the young advocate Chabisa Nelson in Zimbabwe, same thing. So you will not hear about them, you will not see them in public arena until after the election. When we're almost election is when you see Chamisa coming back, Peter Obi coming back, Kiza BCJ coming back, Bobby Wine coming back. But for us, that consistency sticks in your mind. And then they're up to date. So if there's an issue, you will see like recently, the opposition gave, through the chief, they gave the official statement 1 year into the current administration. What have they achieved? So it might look, it is inconsequential, but people tend to follow because you see that's their work to do the checks and balances. So if he comes out and says this government has produced, it was D, scored D in an examination, it means they show that we are in touch with the common person, as they call in Kenya, Mwananchi. So it is the consistency for me. And the same also with our organizations, FIDA and all the awesome consortium ladies. It is the consistency. You don't just meet once in a while and then you disappear. Even if it is the virtual, the Zooms, the consistency has to be there because it's a build-up. It's work in progress. But if you do it one time off, the impact is less. Yeah, unless there's a comment from Kenyans, but I can open the floor now.
Well, just want to comment what Adu asked and what you have just commented. Politicians are very smart. They give the community homework. For example, in our country, for the past 27 years, the political parties are based on ethnicity, ethnic politics. So whenever you go, that is an issue. So this is how, just because somebody is from some ethnic group, whichever political stand he has, or whichever development policy he is going to present, by default, his ethnic groups, people just support that part. So if when that party wins the election, it doesn't even do good for his own citizens. Just trying again to manipulate the other things on behalf of the community, but just doing their own job, or just supporting people in their circle. So the people remain with the headaches. I remember, I think it is in 2008 or something, 2009, when in Kenya there was a very turmoil between the two parties based on the ethnic groups. I think now what I see is, last time there was a fear that there will be such kind of thing, but it didn't happen. I think the level of awareness is raised now. People have started thinking beyond the ethnic group, or to which party or to which ethnic group that person belongs. Instead, what is he going to contribute to the country? When people start thinking about that, I think by default, people will not fight over belongingness. So the sentiment of nationality comes in. So if we think based on on ethnicities and ethnic groups, we still remain fighting, and that will continue forever. So I think for the Ethiopian people and for us, we have to work hard to come out of these tribal things and then start thinking globally or at a national level. What do we contribute? What does this party contribute to the national development, not for this tribal group? This is what I just wanted to comment. Thank you. If you have got my point.
Thank you very much. I can see.
Sorry, I just remembered that in Kenya we managed to nullify a presidential election, and I'm just wondering then how independent the judiciary in Uganda is, and whether then they are able to take such bold steps, because that can also lead us to the right direction. Because if we are agreeing that election is a process and the whole process has to be fair, not only seen, but really practical and fair. So is it then possible? Is that even possible in Uganda? I don't know. Oh, the answer is no? State capture.
But, I mean, without wasting so much of your time, it is really the executive. I don't know whether some news reach you. You see the Speaker of Parliament requesting for permission from the head of the executive to undertake some things, or thanking him for, for some of the things he does, like his role. And then you see the judiciary, my God. So, no.
I guess Uganda's situation is Uganda's situation, I think we will start the template from there tomorrow, just for the record, before we move to Kenya, because we've not exhausted the issues that are pertinent to Uganda. At least we went through for the ones for Ethiopia and tried to get solution. We discussed how to handle the executive muscle. So before I wind up, unless there's a question, then I can make a few comments or remarks. Any other contribution that can't wait and comment? Okay, so it is interesting that we are now here where we are. We've seen Ethiopia and the challenges they're facing as women. We've seen Uganda. We've not actually seen the challenge other than, as my sister calls it, the state capture as number one. So we are keen to hear, Sarah, the other issues like Ethiopia, so that where we can at least help you get solutions, we are willing as sisters in solidarity to give solutions. Then I guess we can start the conversation tomorrow from Uganda because of time, then move straight to Kenya. But just allow me to do an in procedural move, and you'll forgive me, don't call Museveni for me, for the discussions we've had. So this remains here. We don't want to be banned from going to Uganda. So I want to introduce a beautiful lady who has also been marginalized, from the marginalized community in Kenya. She served as a member of parliament through nomination in 2013 in the Kenyan parliament. She's graced the occasion for just a few minutes. I thought it's just important to also see women getting to that glass ceiling. Kenya has been a very good country in terms of representation. However, the Indian or the Asian community, I know most of you only know Pasaris, but also in the Indian community, they say, you know, she's a blender. But she was the first to be nominated, and I think also still the last. We don't have an Asian woman in parliament. She was the first, and it's good just, I can give her 3 minutes just to say hi, and then I will hand over the program back to Maureen to decide whether we'll have tea or we misbehaved and we delayed. So now we are at her mercy. Mheshimiwa Sonia Birdi.
Thank you so much, my sister Asha. Ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. I'm at a loss of words because Asha has just thrown this on me. She's correct. But I want to congratulate you on being able to get this lady to give you a very good presentation on the system of legal and policy framework in Kenya, because I can tell you she's a very sought after lady, especially after she signed up as a mediator. I know very many people who look for her. So I am privileged to be here amongst you. My name is Sonia Birdi, and I just want to share with you just a few things. Yes, in 2013, I got nominated, but I stood for elective politics. And that was in Makadara. And the reason why it was in Makadara is because we have lots of our companies who are owned by Muindis, my father included. So that was just my general area of living. To cut the long story short, because of the opportunities that the 2010 Constitution brought about, I was given the opportunity of being nominated, of which I really thank the President, President Ruto, up till today, because I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, it is not easy fighting an election, and it is not easy receiving a nomination. In today's time, my honest view is this: it does not matter sometimes if you're black, brown, male, female, purple, or pink. 16, I was trying to have a discussion with senior members of my community as to why they're not making ladies, females, members of the community. And what that meant is to get a right to vote, to bring our leaders into the system. That went on until this year, ladies and gentlemen, finally, when the community forwarded us the opportunity for women to be members in the institution. So from 2016 till this year, I had been campaigning thoroughly to get these ladies onto the table. And these women include women like my mother, who is now 76, and her friends, who are now 80-something. Some of them, not including my mother, still do not own a credit card. And some of them, who might be as younger than my sister-in-law, still do not have rights for land or anything like that. Ladies and gentlemen, we're living in 2023. I still am a minority, but it doesn't matter to me anymore, because what I want to see is that all women are raised up from wherever they are, irrespective of where we are, unless one specific species gets up and makes his point, another person of the same species will not be able to say, that's exactly what we're looking for. It takes courage, and it takes a lot of goodwill from partners like yourself, the institutions, and the government. With that, Asha, I want to say thank you for inviting me up here. Asanteni sana to everybody. I have lots more stuff to say, but today is not my day. I will just want to say one last thing. Your talk here is about galvanizing to end sexual and gender-based violence and promote women political participation. I actually feel it should be women leadership. Because today we need more leaders to lead from the front. I'm not saying that politicians are bad. You will find somebody saying doctors are bad. Just yesterday, I was with the speaker of Uttar Pradesh, and he said the similar thing. In India, they're fighting the stigma, which says doctors are bad, lawyers are bad, politicians are bad, so where are the good people? And so we throw back the question back to us, where we stand, what we can do, and how we can lead from the front, and then let the youth pick up the career they want to choose. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mheshimiwa. I know it was an ambush, but you can't come to a vicinity where there are powerful women, especially, just to bring to your attention, they're not only women. I know you see FIDA and you see home, but it's not only FIDA-Kenya, but there's also representatives from Ethiopia and Uganda in this room. So it was bringing these amazing women on board and trying to see how best we can navigate the political participation of women. With that said, I would want to thank everyone. I'm so impressed. Nobody slept in the afternoon, maybe one or two that I said I will not disclose. I don't kiss and tell, but if they misbehave tomorrow, I said my M-Pesa line is open, but I'll still announce them. So thank you so much for your participation. I had a very wonderful time engaging all of you. It was not very boring, so I've enjoyed myself. I hope you've learned, enjoyed yourself, and looking forward to tomorrow's session, where we pick up from my sister's 256 code to see how best we can help Uganda before we delve back to Kenya. And if there's any addition on Ethiopia, then we can pick up from there. With that said, I want to hand over the program to Maureen. Please give Maureen a big clap. If Maureen is the one to decide between